What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And welcome to our show today. It is Friday, October 9th, 2020. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on here. Of course, in hour number 2, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us with her unique perspective on the world. And we've got Mike currently in the control room, but Ken's going to be stepping in about half an hour, probably in time to start taking phone calls when we run out of news here. Big news right now, of course, is Hurricane Delta. It has been downgraded from a Category 3 to a Category 2 storm, but it is expected to come on shore here a little later this evening. And the big problem is that the damage from Hurricane Laura has not really been repaired. So even though Delta is a lot weaker than Laura was, it's going to be dealing with buildings that are already cracked and broken and debris on the ground that's not locked down. And so we could actually see a lot more damage from this one. FEMA has already activated a whole bunch of units to go down there and be on standby to deal with this. But those poor people, they've had 6 of these storms here this year. And I'm sure a lot of them are wondering, why did I move down here? It's a beautiful part of the country here, and I have fond memories of New Orleans itself. But it's a nasty storm, and they're figuring, the surge is going to be somewhere between 7 and 11 feet along the coastline. That is a surge severe enough to result in injury and death. So, if you're in that part of the country, please be very careful. Right now, they're saying that in the eye of the storm, winds are gusting to 115 miles an hour. So even though it's a Cat 2, it's still a serious piece of weather that you need to deal with. All right, let's get on over to Donald Trump and his health update. According to the White House doctor, Donald Trump will be able to go on out in public and engage in campaign activity starting tomorrow. And he's already scheduled a law and order event at the White House for tomorrow. So he's basically coming on out. We still don't have any word if there's a negative test for COVID on the president. But he keeps reporting out there that he's doing really well. And of course, to all those people out on social media who were wishing that he was going to dead, all we can say is neener, neener, neener. Because the social media, the liberals on social media and the corporate media, they were actually happy when Trump caught COVID-19. And then he got better and they went, gee, we thought we had him this time here. All righty, now, Deadline has apologized. They apparently published a draft story claiming Vice President Pence has coronavirus. And this was based on the fact that during the VP debate, when he wasn't dodging the fly, people noticed there was a red spot on one eye, which is not one of the COVID symptoms I have to mention. But basically, the doctors are saying he just burst a blood vessel in the eye. It happens to all of us. It's happened to me. And it's no big deal. And it's not coronavirus. So this online entertainment news site issued an apology after publishing the story, which went wild all over social media. And everybody was saying, well, if Trump has COVID and Pence has COVID, then it's time for President Pelosi here. Okay, so the Trump campaign is out there saying the presidential debate schedule should go back to normal after the Commission on Presidential Debates announced it was going to go virtual for the second event due to President Trump's doctor writing that Trump should be clear to return to normal activities on Saturday, 10 days after his COVID diagnosis. And a lot of people think the Presidential Debate Commission is going virtual to give an advantage to Joe Biden. And that's why Donald Trump isn't going to show up if it's virtual. Joe Biden said he would show up. Then he changed his mind and said he's going to hold a rally instead. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. There's also speculation that the second debate may get moved to October 22nd. Now, we posted a video to whatreallyhappened.com. It's a YouTube video in which Joe Biden admits to getting the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Hunter Biden fired. So that's a video that needs to go viral, because, you know, there's literally a war going on between those of us who want to expose political corruption and those who think political corruption is perfectly acceptable so long as the politician in question supports their view of the world here. Now, remember that first presidential debate where they were talking about this town hall undecided audience here, actually turned out to be Biden supporters and Biden campaign workers. And so they were loading up the audience, which is why the after debate polls came out in favor of Biden. There were Biden people in the audience to begin with here. Okay, now, Steve Scully, who's a host for C-SPAN, is going to be the moderator of the second debate between Trump and Biden. And apparently on Thursday, he publicly asked avowed anti-Trumper Anthony Scaramucci about whether he should respond to the president, how he should treat the president. It caused a huge outcry on social media because it really underscores the fact that Steve Scully is not objective and fair as a moderator. Scully's latest explanation is somebody hacked his Twitter account and put these messages out to make him look bad, and that just drew more ridicule and abuse from social media. They're not buying that story here. Okay, now Attorney General Bill Barr is out there telling Republican leaders that the Durham report will not be ready by Election Day. Now, last month, Democrats were frothing at the mouth over the investigation conducted by John Durham, with the Democratic chairs of 4 House committees demanding an emergency investigation into the probe out of fear of an October surprise. Well, it was much ado about nothing. Barr has made it clear they should not expect any further indictments before November 3rd. I don't know who got to Barr. Maybe he's on Jeffrey Epstein's little black book. We don't know. That has yet to be made fully public. Now, the debate over mail-in voting is continuing. There have been all kinds of problems, abandoned ballots found in ditches, all kinds of things like that going on. And looking at this article coming out of blabber.buzz, Democrats are having second thoughts about mail-in votes. And as more and more of these problems surface, a lot of them are saying they're unhappy they voted by mail and would have preferred to vote in public. Now, Trump has warned, a lot of people have warned many times, the system cannot handle such a mass amount of votes coming through the mail. And Democrats are now worried that the vote by mail push may actually work against them because more Democrats are using the system than Republicans, and it is showing up to be highly flawed. Now, Nancy Pelosi has announced today that she has introduced a bill into the House of Representatives to form a commission to examine the president with the idea of possibly removing him from authority under the 25th Amendment. And she's focusing on Section 4, which involves measures to declare the president's incapacity. Now, Section 4 reads directly, whenever the vice president, that means Pence has to go along with this, and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of acting President. Now, the ringer in here is the phrase, such other body as Congress may by law provide, and that's what Nancy Pelosi is trying to do by setting up this commission, to circumvent the necessity for senior executives within the executive branch to come on board and agree that President Trump, because of the medication that he's on, is unable to function mentally. Now, the president is sick. He's not disabled. And certainly from his public appearances so far, and we'll get more of them tomorrow, it doesn't look like he's mentally incapacitated, certainly not standing next to Joe Biden. But Pelosi is pushing this. Politically, it's a non-starter. They'll never get this through the Senate. But it's about a political statement about the Democrats going into the election saying, well, Trump may not be, capable of being president. There's already talk of 25th Amendment. It's a talking point. Pelosi is manufacturing a talking point to use against President Trump. Now, it gets a little bit weirder out there because over at the New York Times, they're calling literally for United Nations election intervention. And they've got this editorial titled America May Need International Intervention, was written by Peter Beinart, who's also a contributor at The Atlantic, which came up with that bogus story of Trump calling our dead soldiers suckers and losers. And he's also a political commentator for CNN. And the article basically says, distilling it on down, says Biden must follow the Belarus protesters and appeal to the world for help if Trump wins re-election. So Beinart makes the case for foreign election interference under the auspices of the notoriously globalist anti-Trump United Nations, especially the Human Rights Council. Now, the Pope is stepping on in, saying that the New World Order needs to happen now with the United Nations in charge. In his latest encyclical letter, Francis issues a plea for the nations of the world to hand their reins of power over to the UN, which Francis says will lead us all into the New World Order. Well, I know a little bit about the inner workings of the United Nations. I have some contacts in there. And frankly, if you think the corruption and politicking in Washington, D.C. is bad, they are a kindergarten compared to what goes on over at the United Nations. So I think it's a bad idea. It's definitely a bad idea. I mean, after all, the United Nations can't even rein in their member Israel. Okay, now over at the NBA, the commissioner is saying the league will likely pull Black Lives Matter messaging next year. They've had just this historic ratings plunge, ad revenues are drying up, and they're saying it's time for the moral crusades to go right back out the window. So NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is confirming this week that Black Lives Matter messaging will be pulled from the court and from players' jerseys next year. Now, they're having a meeting with all of the players and saying the league is completely committed to standing for social justice and racial inequality, but it's just not working with the audience. And I was saying this weeks ago. People go to sporting events to see the sporting events, not be lectured at. People go to entertainment to be entertained, not to be lectured at. And as wokeness spreads through professional sports and professional entertainment, and they're looking at their box office and their ratings and their ad revenues, and they're dropping down, and everybody's scratching their head saying, what's going on? We're giving them the very best propaganda money can buy. Well, people instinctively shy away from propaganda. And I've been to basketball games. I've been to a couple of Lakers games. I'm not a big basketball fan, but I wouldn't want to go if all the players are going to be there kneeling for the national anthem and, talking Black Lives Matter and playing the Black national anthem. That's not what I go to the game for. I want to have fun. I want to eat cheap hot dogs. I mean, they're not cheap to pay for, but you get what I mean. That's what I want to do. All right, so getting more into coronavirus, and for those of you who sent in emails expressing their concern, thank you very much here. Claire and I had our nasal swabs early this morning. We should have our final results no later than next Wednesday. We still have no symptoms whatsoever, and we heard from the person that we supposedly were exposed to COVID-19 from. The first symptoms that she got were the loss of taste and smell. So we're here snacking on flavored waters and potato chips, and as long as we can taste them and smell them, we figure we're okay. But apparently there's a new study that is showing that COVID-19 has a higher risk of contact transmission person to person because the coronavirus can survive on human skin for 9 hours. And this is why Claire and I were really worried, because the person that exposed us to COVID-19 is Claire's physical therapist. And Claire had a session on the day that the test result came back positive for this person, which involved a lot of skin-to-skin contact between the physical therapist and my lovely wife. So that is why we took this very, very seriously, and we got our test this morning. And, right now our sense is we don't have it. or if we have it, we're totally asymptomatic. But we're self-isolating, and we're not going out of the house. We're not going to the kiddies' sporting events this weekend. Claire's attending church virtually, and the rest of that. We certainly have enough food in the house to last us through. We figure the self-isolation would end a week from today, and so that's what we're aiming at here. Now, over at Bristol University, they have ordered 300 students to self-isolate after 40 coronavirus cases emerged in one hall of residence. And everybody living in the residence must only socialize with those in their living circle from now on. Not exactly sure what that means. Anyway, over in Nevada, and this is important, health officials have ordered nursing homes to stop using the rapid COVID-19 test. And the reason for that is they have found that 60% of the positive results were false. There has been a huge, huge problem with these tests having false positives and false negatives. They're not reliable. Now, over in India, they're introducing a new coronavirus test, and it's named Feluda. They claim it's accurate, and it can return results within an hour. It costs less than $7. And all it is a paper test strip that you just stick in your mouth on your tongue. And it was created using the CRISPR technology to make whatever it is that's on that paper. So good luck, and I hope it works here. Now, a while back, we had a caller call on in saying that they had used one of these photoplethysmographs on their finger to measure their blood oxygen, both with and without a mask. And somebody repeated the experiment, and they took it a step further because they took blood oxygen measurements without a mask, with a face mask, and then a Guy Fawkes mask. And what they basically found, they did 4 15-minute experiments running up and down the hall with no mask, surgical mask, or a surgical mask plus a Fawkes mask. And they taped their mouth shut to make sure they were breathing through their nose. And the results they came up with, they didn't find any difference between no mask and the surgical mask, but apparently the surgical mask and the Guy Fawkes mask did in fact lower their blood oxygen content. So I guess my idea of wearing my Guy Fawkes mask over my surgical mask just for the laughs is probably not a really, really good idea. Okay, turning over to the international news, Armenian forces have reclaimed the tactical initiative in the battle for the Nagorno-Karabakh area, and they conducted counterattacks, taking back positions earlier captured by Azerbaijan on the Jabrayil front. And the fighting continues. The troops are performing their tasks brilliantly, you ask, but heavy fighting is continuing. Now, the Armenian president, Sarkisyan, has charged Turkey is creating another Syria in the Caucasus by coming on in and interfering with this war on behalf of one side. And he's saying if we don't act now internationally, stopping Turkey, then everyone will be hit. Now, Armenia has accused Azerbaijan of intentionally bombing a historic cathedral, sorry about that, in Karabakh. And the Ministry of Defense has accused Azerbaijan of targeting the historic Cathedral of Christ the Savior in Shushi city, which lies in disputed Nagorno-Karabakh on Thursday. And according to the Armenian Ministry of Defense, the Azerbaijani forces bombed the cathedral church after launching several missiles toward the Karabakh region. And the official representative of the ministry, Artsran let me try this one more time. Hanfanesian posted on Facebook, what is the use of dialogue with those who bomb churches? And for those of you looking at your history, when the decision was being made where to bomb Japan during World War II, including the use of the nuclear weapons, they made a big point of staying away from religiously significant locations, except for that one church at Ground Zero in Hiroshima. We're going to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. And welcome back to our show here. And again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser. We need the little money to support us so that we can stand up to the big money, which is trying to basically buy the country out from underneath of us. So once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, I'm going to take a second here to put out a little bit of a request for Rivero's Rangers. YouTube recently changed their interface, and our streaming show used to be automatic every day. And now the way it seems to be working now, we literally have to schedule each day's YouTube feed every single day ahead of showtime. Now, I'm sure that somewhere in there is still a mechanism for YouTube to pick up our show on a regular schedule and broadcast it, but we can't find it. So if anybody out there is a YouTube expert, please drop me an email and I'll put you in touch with our tech guru about trying to figure out an easier way to get this done without having to basically sit there and type all of the stuff in every single day. All righty, getting on back to the international news here. The war in Syria continues. The goal is to liberate Syria from terrorists. This is from Bashar al-Assad, basically saying how Russia's assistance has provided the turning point in the Syrian war, allowing them to crush the terrorists. Now, Russia's military assistance to Syria is in its 5th year, and Sputnik News asked Assad whether after these 5 years he could say the war was over. And Assad said, no, definitely not. As long as you have terrorists occupying some areas of our country and committing different kinds of crimes and assassinations, it's not over. Now, heard that the leadership of Armenia and Azerbaijan, or at least their representatives, are on their way to Moscow to possibly talk peace. Once again, we see Putin as a global statesman rather than the warmongers that seem to populate the capitals of most of the rest of the countries of planet Earth here. Over in France, they have confirmed that military involvement in Karabakh after the appeal by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was mocked. He basically called on Turkey to use its considerable influence to try and calm tensions. And this was mocked by commentators in the West as well as the Armenian media. Okay. Half of Nagorno-Karabakh's population has now been displaced by the fighting. It is a real war here. Now, there's a video that has come on out supposedly showing Turkey redeploying S-400 missile defense batteries to the Black Sea coast for drills. And basically the video shows the S-400s moving through the city of Samsun on their way to their destination. They're being put into play here. Over in Kyrgyzstan, unrest is brewing. It's sliding deeper into chaos. Rival opposition factions are making grabs for power, much like the Democrats are doing here in this country. And this happened a day after they stormed government buildings, forcing the prime minister to quit and a parliamentary election to be annulled. I'm hoping we're not going to see violence like that in this country following our election. But to hear some of the rhetoric out there, it's very, very scary. All right, Israel and the United Arab Emirates have drawn up plans to build a rival to Egypt's Suez Canal. Egypt is, not surprisingly, a little bit concerned about this. And basically, warming economic ties between Israel and the UAE have forced a wedge between Abu Dhabi and Cairo, amid talk of plans to build a rival canal to the Suez. About 10% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal, the fastest shipping route between Europe and Asia. And of course, Egypt makes quite a bit of money off of the transit fees here. So the Suez Canal is a vital lifeline for the Egyptian economy. with maritime traffic and revenues actually risen in the first 4 months of 2020 before dipping in the second quarter. All right, NATO has increased its warship presence in the Black Sea by 33% compared to 2019. And they're strengthening the presence of warships from non-Black Sea NATO members in the Black Sea. The military bloc is attempting to demonstrate its dominance in the region and send a message to Moscow about who it is who's really influencing things in that part of the world here. Now, Russia has carried out successfully the test launch of a ship-launched hypersonic missile. They did it on Putin's birthday. That's one heck of a candle. Try and blowing that one out. All right, we have got to take a break for commercials. We're going to go ahead and open the phone lines for the next half hour. We've got a caller waiting on the line, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones to Randy in Missouri. Hello, Randy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Well, one of the things is the story about the governor of Michigan and the alleged plot to kidnap her by some militia members.
Yes.
Apparently, this was there was a FBI agent that was inside this group, and we don't know if this person was steering them or entrapping them or just reporting on what took place. But I find that the timing of this whole event is very suspicious, since the governor has taken so much flack over her draconian lockdown orders.
Yes.
And just last week, the Supreme Court reversed those orders and declared them to be unconstitutional. In other words, the governor was wrong, according to the Supreme Court of Michigan. And then all of a sudden, we have this event take place, and now the governor is not blaming her own policy, but blaming the Trump administration for...
Which is amazing, because most of who they've arrested so far are Antifa. They're anti-Trumpers.
Well, that's convenient.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know what to make of it, but the timing was very suspicious.
It does seem like a pitiful bid for sympathy.
And it also extends the whole narrative of militia, white supremacy, that whole narrative gets to be taking place in the media.
Yes.
Well, that's all I really needed to say. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to switch over to Steve in Kentucky. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Been a long time since I've called, but been listening. I just heard you mentioned the Pelosi Commission that she's forming, and I have just a little bit different take on it. You mentioned that you don't think she'll get it through the Senate.
No,
I don't think she needs to, and here's why. I think that the Democrats have sown so much distrust in the election that they're creating an election which will likely be disputed by both sides.
Yes.
Mainly through these mail-in ballots and other things. If this happens, and it's disputed well enough, the decision for the president will go into the House.
Yes.
And they will have a vote in the House alone, which Nancy Pelosi will preside over. I think she's confident enough that Biden is going to be made president. This commission, I believe, and it's just my opinion, is to make it easier for the Democrats early next year, after Biden is put in place, to have him declared incompetent so that Kamala Harris can become president.
That's one possibility, definitely. But you need to remember that if the House of Representatives is unable to elect a president, if they deadlock, if there's no clear winner by the constitutionally mandated transition date of January 20th, then Pelosi becomes president if, in fact, the Democrats are still in control of the House of Representatives.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And I think that's what she's thinking of.
Anyway, I think that's a little bit different take on what she may be doing, because she's not, well, she's crazy, but she's not stupid. She knows she can't get this through the Senate. Unless, of course, early after the elections, early next year, they if they were to, by some fluke, gain a majority in both the House and the Senate, then they could do all this. But I think the commission would serve to allow them to conveniently remove Biden for mental incompetence so that they can get Harris in there. That's just my take.
Well, the commission is not going to be a permanent body. It is a one-time only device, and Pelosi has made it clear that it's specifically addressing whether Donald Trump's mental faculties have been damaged by the medications that he's on. And she's specifically focusing on the fact that one of the medications is a steroid, which does have as side effects, altering brain patterns. Can trigger anger. They call it roid rage. And but again, Trump certainly does not come across as being mentally incapacitated. So I think Pelosi is grandstanding as always, and I think what she really is aiming at doing is having another talking point to use against the president before November 3rd.
Like she said, she's got a lot of tools, or how'd she put it? Arrows in her quiver, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
That's all I have, sir.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mark in Atlanta. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. You're on the air.
Yeah, all right. No, Mark in North Carolina.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
That's all right. Hey, Mike, listen, you were talking about the oxygen thing before with the COVID. My friend, I told you my friend's got it. He's got the COVID, and he got that. He's the one I told you about. He took it without a mask. He was 97. With the mask, he was 92 or 91. I'm sorry, he went down to 91. He caught the COVID over at the prison he works in. I used to work there, where everybody's required to wear a mask for your whole 12-hour shift. So the mask doesn't protect you from anything. It's just a joke. It's a bad joke, and it's a virtue signaling thing, and it's a control thing that the establishment wants on us. That's all that is. But Mike, I just want to say, if you were in contact with somebody that had it, and even if what I would suggest, I suggest that anyway to most people. Like I said, masks to me are a bunch of BS.
Yes.
But I would suggest vitamin D, D3.
Yep.
I would suggest lots of vitamin C.
Yes.
That's both foods and supplements. I would suggest also zinc. You get zinc. You can get you can get it as a supplement. You can get a lot of zinc.
That prevents it from replicating.
Grass-fed beef, fish, things like that, cheese, and of course pumpkin seeds, very high in zinc. So there's a lot of ways you can get these things, and if you have these things, they'll fight the virus, not only the COVID virus, but any other virus that you might have. That's the way the body acts. It needs its defenses, and a mask isn't going to defend. And then one more thing about Pelosi and the 25th Amendment. If that witch ever does become president somehow, okay?
Yeah.
The 25th Amendment should immediately be applied to her, because that woman is completely incompetent and incapable of running this country. The woman does, again, if anything, she's as bad as Biden. She barely knows the planet she's living on anymore. The woman is so cut up, her all the plastic surgery she's had on top of it. She looks like something out of a Frankenstein movie, Frankenstein's wife.
Well, that dimple on her chin, that dimple on her chin used to be her belly button.
I would be surprised, yeah. So,
One more facelift and she'll be sporting a Van Dyke.
So they should immediately use 25th Amendment on her. We're in a bad state, Mike, when we got this type of choices for president. I'll tell you the truth. We're in really bad shape. I wish things could work out like, the way you have free agents in sports. I wish somehow that we could put a bid in for Vladimir Putin to be our president, and that we'd have to change the constitution, but that would be
because he's not a natural-born citizen.
Yeah, but anyway, if we could only work it out like that with free agents, like we do for football players, baseball players, basketball, whatever else, that would be a wonderful thing, because we sure aren't getting the people here in this country. That's for sure. We had one person, Tulsi Gabbard. I was looking at her Facebook post today. She's standing up for Assange and for Snowden and for whistleblowers and all that. But the Democrats didn't want anybody like that, because the Democrats, like the Republicans, are basically a deep state party. And
yes.
What's his name today showed Bill Barr showed his true nature, that he's only part of the deep state and doesn't want to dig any holes against the deep state by going for, by refusing to do any real investigation into the Democrats, for what they did in Russiagate and in the attempted coup in this country. Instead, they're interested in picking up some, I believe they're probably more like Antifa people there in Michigan, or whoever they are, or anarchists or whatever they are, with this nonsense about that they wanted to kidnap the Whitmer there in
well, apparently they're saying they wanted to trigger a civil war.
The FBI, the FBI it's an evil organization. It needs to be disbanded. I mean, who would want to kidnap Whitmer anyway? I mean, they'd probably be begging in 10 minutes for somebody to take her,
Yes.
She drives them crazy. But you're right. This FBI does want to trigger off a civil war. It's an evil organization. It should be disbanded. You talk about disbanding the police or disfunding the police. Well, you want to start with the FBI, because that's the first one. I have more faith in mall cops, in the investigative ability of mall cops, than I do in the FBI. And that's all I got to say, Mike. You take it easy.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Have a good weekend. We're switching over to Steve in Nevada. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. So this guy dies up in San Francisco, and they put him in a coffin in the back of the hearse. And they're going up this hill, and they almost get to the top, and somehow the back door jimmy's open, and out comes this flying coffin. And it goes down the streets through the red lights and all the way to the bottom of the hill, and there's a Walgreens at the bottom, and this coffin goes crashing through the front doors and goes all the way back to where the pharmacist is. Yeah. And the coffin stops, and the lid slowly rises, and this corpse looks up at the pharmacist, and he says, "You got anything to stop this coffin?"
Anyway, that's a groaner. That is a groaner.
Come on, can I get a sympathy smile? Anyway, I want to respond to the guy
with the mustache and the beard.
So I want to respond to this guy from Japan, and I guess this misconception all over the world that you can come to Las Vegas and get a hooker, and it's not true. There's only 2 or 3 counties in Nevada that prostitution is legal in, and I live in one of them. I'm about 50 miles north of Vegas.
Yes.
And I know he's only half kidding, but he says, talking about, you can, like putting a sack over their head or something, a mask. Well, I live a couple of miles from 2 brothels, and they've been closed since like January. Like half the town is closed. But what they do is they'll fly into Vegas, and then they'll get a limo out here. We got the Chicken Ranch and Sherry's Ranch, and they'll get a limo. So that's all I got to say, Mike. Just thought, have a good weekend.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Same to you. We're going to go to Laura in Michigan. Hello, Laura. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to talk about this Whitmer thing.
Yes.
Whitmer. That was the Boogaloo Boys. I think that was put together by the FBI. That's nothing but to try to disparage the Michigan militia. I know the Michigan militia, and you'd have a hard time fighting anything that they've done violently. It's never happened. But the FBI is trying to get them because it's come up in the debates. And Trump just had to say, you know what? The truth is, the militia is in the Constitution. Or
Yes.
Antifa and Black Lives Matter are not. That's what he should have said. That's
Yes.
how you debate. You give the truth and the facts. See? I wish more people would call into your show would give truth and facts and not their opinion or their jokes. I mean, I think that radio time is precious. We only get an hour with you, you know?
Okay.
So I just want to make sure everybody realizes it's not the Michigan militia, and not to, you know, not to think that anything bad about them. I was involved with them ever since John Statmiller was in. I used to go to meetings with John. So we're talking 30 years.
Yep.
I know the militia, and they're good people. I could vouch for the fact that they are very good people.
Well, the
We're
vast
gonna need
majority
them.
of them are, but you know, the FBI has targeted them because they represent a potentially armed resistance against the transformation of our country from a republic into whatever it is the progressive liberal Democrats want. And there's a long history of the FBI infiltrating these various militias and then setting them up to do something where they can be bashed in the media.
That's right. That's exactly right. We got to stand behind them because we're going to need them.
Yes.
With all this rioting and everything going on, we're going to need them very badly. So that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to back them up and remind people, don't disparage the Michigan militia. I'm sure John will probably be talking about that later on, too.
He probably will.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over to David in Boston. David, I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I Michael. The train's just taking off. It'll be quiet in a minute there.
I can barely hear you, David.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, is that better, Michael?
That's a little better.
Okay, yeah, I just got off a train. The train was just taking off, making a racket. Mike, so you can hear me, huh?
I can hear you now, and you're on the air.
Okay, yeah. Mike, listen, to pick up where I left off yesterday, y'all will recall Yuri Call and Gordon Call. Yuri Call and Gordon Call.
Yes.
Gordon Call was a World War II hero, and what this FBI has put the poor Joan Call through is terrible. Yuri never shot anybody, and they've locked him up and throw away the key. Now you got Lavoy Finicum.
Yes.
Out there. Just
okay, David, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We got to take a break for commercials. I'm going to bring you back right after the commercial. Then we're going to take one more phone call and close the lines after that for the Lady Claire. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with David in Boston. And David, you were talking about Lavoy Finicum. So please pick up where you left off. David, are you there?
Now there was let's see. Yeah, let me see. Can you hear me, Michael?
I can hear you just barely. It's not a good connection.
I won't be able to hear you very well, but I took it off speaker. Is that better?
Yes, that's definitely better. And I kind of need you to rush because we've got one more phone call after you, and then we've got the Lady Claire.
Oh, okay. Now listen, there was another man, Maynard C. Campbell, and he wrote a very powerful booklet about the massacre at Ruby Ridge. And anyways, the FBI and everything surrounded his cabin. They were going to immolate him just because he cut a little bit of dead wood on some federal land, supposedly they claimed.
Yeah.
And it was very dramatic, Michael. I don't know if you possibly remember it, but Tom Valentine, the radio talk show host from years ago, Tom Valentine, had him live and was trying to talk him down all night. The FBI was going to immolate him, light his cabin on fire, and he wasn't going to surrender. They weren't going to take him alive. He didn't do anything wrong, but they weren't going to take him alive. And anyways, Tom Valentine succeeded talking to him all night to get him to surrender. So he did surrender, and the SOBs put him in a prison where he was stabbed. He was stabbed about 30-something times. They set him up to be stabbed to death in prison. Maynard C. Campbell. Now, Hale Boggs, the Speaker of the House, Michael, very quickly, you know, he was asking J. Edgar Hoover, demanding that J. Edgar Hoover step down, because J. Edgar Hoover he knew that J. Edgar Hoover was tapping all the telephone lines of the congressmen.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why they offed him in Begich. And very quickly, Michael, I'm going to tell you, I'm disgusted with President Proud Boy. He's saying he's okay. He's condemning the Ku Klux Klan and he's condemning white supremacists and so on. Michael, half the nation believes that he's a white supremacist. So when he points the finger at white people, accusing us of being white supremacists, he's got three fingers pointing back at himself. He's Exhibit A as a white supremacist. Doesn't that moron realize that? Doesn't he realize that? Nothing, you know, this is baloney, Michael. Any white person could be accused of being a white supremacist under this.
That's exactly where they're aiming. That's exactly where they're trying to go. All white people are racist. All white people are white supremacists.
And my concluding thought, Michael, I'm looking forward to listening to Lady Claire. Isn't it a funny coincidence, Michael, that this country's going through a color revolution? Now, isn't it very interesting? It just so happens that black people aren't called colored people anymore, that they're called people of color. Everybody except white people are people of color. Isn't it a funny coincidence that all these people of color just happen to arrive when this nation is being plunged into a color revolution?
Okay, David, I got to let you go.
I won't go into it anymore, Mike, because I've said it before.
All right, there's the music here. We have to take a break for station identification. We have Layla waiting on the line for a phone call, to be followed by the lovely Lady Claire. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. We're going to close the phone lines here, but first we're going to take a phone call from Layla in Canada. Layla, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Very quickly, the FBI note that they produced could not possibly have been written by any ragtag militia. It was obviously contrived. If you look at the grammar that they used in the note, there's no way that dots. You know, they had commas where they were supposed to be, apostrophes where they were supposed to be, and they weren't using the triple dots that are meaningless grammatically.
Yes.
That was clearly contrived. Finally, one other thing. I do know Armenians who are in the Armenian diaspora, and their belief is that Russia is using Turkey's Erdogan to break up NATO. Those are my comments. Make of it as you will. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Have a good weekend. We're going to close the phone lines for a while. We may reopen them a little bit later on in the show, but I wanted to give Claire sort of a clear slate to work with. So, lovely Lady Claire, what's on your mind?
Well, I'd like to go back to this, yet again, attempted coup by Nancy Pelosi. And I have a question for you, Michael, because I don't know.
Yes.
Can she constitutionally, legally, get President Trump out before the election?
Well, in theory, the way the 25th Amendment is written, if the vice president, that means Pence has to sign on to this thing.
Yeah.
And a majority of the officials in the executive branch or a body selected by Congress, which is why to set up this commission.
Yeah.
Okay. But the key word there is selected by Congress. She can't just say, I'm creating a commission to invoke the 25th Amendment. She has to get it through the Senate, which is why it's a non-starter. But she could, in theory, yes, if she can get all these people to come on board, blackmail, bribes, whatever it's going to take, she could remove Donald Trump by the end of the week.
Whoa.
Yes. And then Pence would become the president, and then they declare that Pence has got COVID-19, and Pelosi becomes president.
Ooh, that is a scenario that is amazingly wild.
I'm sure that Pelosi goes to sleep every night dreaming of that.
I'm sure that she does. I also have a question on our last caller, Layla from Canada. What do you think? What do you think about that observation that Russia is using Erdogan to bust up NATO?
Well, obviously, NATO's been putting a lot of pressure on Russia, certainly up in the North Sea and the Arctic, and moving closer and closer to Russia's borders. So Putin has to be taking note of that. And right now, Turkey is NATO's weak spot because Erdogan's behavior is factionalizing the NATO membership. Some are for him, some are against. They're looking at the way he has intruded Turkey into several regional conflicts. And so it's entirely possible that Putin is thinking that a gentle nudge on Turkey could result in, if not the destruction of, but the paralysis of NATO.
A diminution, if you will, or weakening.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense. I'd like to start with my topics about something that was created by 3 of the world's top epidemiologists, published as the Great Barrington Declaration. Now, what this is, Mike, it's a short treatise that advocates a controversial approach to managing the coronavirus pandemic. Now, these professors were J. Bhattacharya of Stanford, Sunetra Gupta of Oxford, and Martin Kulldorff of Harvard University. Now, what these people are arguing is that societies around the globe should reopen immediately and completely. Now, as of this writing, this particular declaration has been signed by 3,089. That's a pretty significant number.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people, ladies and guys. Other medical and public health scientists, 4,532 medical practitioners, and around 70,000 members of the general public. Now, while these scientists are not the first to express such views, given the degree to which their stance conflicts, and does it conflict, with prevailing wisdom that everyone has a moral obligation to participate in efforts to quote-unquote stop the spread, it's not surprising that they have already encountered a lot of opposition.
Probably from the manufacturers of face masks.
Gee, you think?
I think.
Among their primary detractors is Yale epidemiologist Greg Gonsalves, who considers their proposal akin to a suggestion that society cull the herd of the sick and disabled.
Well, that's essentially what herd immunity is all about, is let the disease run its course, kill off who it's going to kill, and the survivors will be immune.
Mike, what do you think about that from a moral and scientific background?
Well, I see it as immoral, but I'm not sure that the current approach is really working, because all the self-isolation and the social distancing and the masks slow the spread of the disease, but it's going to get to everybody eventually. I mean, look how careful you and I have been. And, we still got exposed.
Yeah, and how careful. And I need to tell you, folks, I know Mike has mentioned that we've been exposed, ironically, through my physical therapist. And
a lot of touching.
Well,
a lot of touching.
The lady is just brilliant at what she does, and she's offered me a world of help. And
then come nighttime, I touch her. So
yes, dear.
Get off.
Get off. Stop.
Get off.
And a question arises to me. Are we looking at the coronavirus theater, if you will, Mike, very incorrectly right now with all these lockdowns and the masks and the whole 9 yards?
Well, everybody is using the crisis to further whatever their particular agenda is. I think the masks are more about depersonalization and loss of individuality, the way over in the Mideast where they make all the women cover their faces with veils. It's a way of basically hammering down individual identity, because the masks just really aren't proving to be all that effective.
No.
Again, your physical therapist was wearing one, a good one.
Yes.
And it still didn't help.
I know, and I was wearing one too.
Yes, and so was I. And but the everybody's using it. The Democrats are using it to attack Trump. Trump is using it to try and say, hey, it could have been much worse. I'm doing a good job. And unfortunately, what is really best for the general public, is getting lost in that. Then you add in all the pharmaceutical companies who are looking at billions of dollars in profits from brand new medications to deal with this. When it's been shown that a lot of existing medications like hydroxychloroquine and even nicotinic acid are very effective at wiping this out.
Right. And then there's also the issue of supplements.
Yes.
Because the American diet it's rich in a lot of things, but a lot of times the nutrients you really need, it's not that rich in, and you wind up having to do some research.
Well, a lot of our farm soil is exhausted.
Yeah.
And the plants can't pull up vitamins from the soil if certain chemicals and molecules aren't there to be taken care of. And that's why we have so many food crops that are deficient in the nutrition that we used to get from them.
Right.
So we go to pills.
Yeah.
In response to what somebody was saying before, Claire and I take vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc. We've been doing it all along ever since this began, and maybe that's the reason why we're not showing symptoms. If, in fact, we test positive, which we won't know until probably Wednesday.
And the only thing we can do with that is just to kind of let it go. All I can say is thank God we both home office right
Yes,
now.
absolutely. And we,
And going
if
back,
only TV wasn't so lousy.
Oh, I know. It's, what did Newton Minnow say? A vast wasteland?
Yes, it's a vast cultural wasteland.
Hasn't improved much. And getting back to the coronavirus, there's a question that needs to be asked. And that question is, did the World Health Organization just accidentally confirm that COVID is no more dangerous than the regular flu? Now, this was authored by Kit Knightley via offguardian.org, and the article states that the World Health Organization has finally confirmed what they and many experts and studies have been saying for months. The coronavirus is really not that much more deadly or dangerous than the seasonal flu. And it's interesting how this sort of came out. The WHO's top brass made this announcement during a special session of the World Health Organization's 34-member executive board meeting on Monday, October 5th. But it seems that no one really understood it. And in fact, they didn't even completely seem to understand it themselves. Because at the session, a Dr. Michael Ryan, the World Health Organization's head of emergencies, revealed that they believe that roughly 10% of the world has been infected with what they are describing as SARS-CoV-2.
COVID-19.
Yeah. This is their best estimate and a huge increase over the number of officially recognized cases, which stands at around 35 million. Now, this gets curiouser. Dr. Margaret Harris, who is a World Health Organization spokesperson, later confirmed the figure, stating that it was based on the average results of all the broad seroprevalence studies done around the world. As much as the WHO were attempting to spin this as a bad thing, Dr. Ryan even said it means the vast majority of the world remains at risk. It's actually good news and confirms once more that the virus is nothing like as deadly as everyone predicted. Now, the global population is roughly, give or take, 7.8 billion people. That's still a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
If 10% have been infected, that is 780 million cases. The global death toll currently attributed to COVID-19 is 1,061,539. Now, that's an infection fatality rate of roughly, or 0.14%. It's not even 1%.
Yeah, it's 14/100ths of 1%.
Yeah, and it's right in line with the seasonal flu and the predictions of many experts from all.
I have to wonder how many diagnoses of COVID-19 are actually just flu. They're both very similar
Yes.
In terms of their their virus
Onset,
origins
yeah.
and their onset. The symptoms are certainly very similar. And we know that early on there were financial inducements to medical practitioners and hospitals to try and ramp up the numbers of COVID-19 as much as possible.
Yeah, that was the fear factor going on.
And a lot of people, were out there. They were dying of other things, but the doctors were putting down died of COVID-19. Run over by a truck, dead of COVID-19. Yeah. Jesus died of COVID-19. The cross had nothing to do with it.
And
that's what Jesus said.
Ouch. I love you, dear.
Yes, dear.
There was another article also from Zero Hedge, and I would like our readers and listeners out there, if you haven't stumbled into this website, it's very solid. It's very fact-based most of the time. And I have a great deal of respect for this consortium who write under the name of Tyler Durden. And the question that was being asked was, does the coronavirus make our constitutional freedom of assembly obsolete?
I vote no on that.
I vote no too. But now this came originally from Brandon Smith via altmarket.us. And over the past couple of weeks, there is a trend that seems to be apparent. The state of Idaho, specifically in Moscow, Idaho.
Gosh darn Russians.
Lata country. The city council of Moscow has issued a mandatory mask order, and they are using police to enforce it.
Yes.
And bizarrely, the city had 0 deaths from COVID at the time the mask order was instituted, meaning their action was in response to absolutely nothing.
Except the fear mongering coming from corporate media.
Idaho has had a total of 500 deaths from COVID since the beginning of the outbreak. Now, Mike, to put this in a little better perspective, the state also has around 400 deaths from diabetes every year and 250 deaths from flu, pneumonia, according to the CDC. Perhaps they should ban sugar and make masks mandatory for the flu as well, just to be safe. The residents of Moscow, however, are not terribly happy with the city council's attempt to unilaterally enforce such mandates. Now, church congregations in particular are fighting back by holding outdoor services without masks. The city has responded by arresting the pastors of any church that dare defy the mask laws. And I bring up this specific instance of coronavirus enforcement because the circumstances surrounding it are really disturbing for people who love liberty. First, it is not surprising that Lata County is one of the only counties in Idaho that leans to the left, not just a little bit, but kind of almost over.
A lot.
And the majority of the city council of Moscow is made up of people who like to lean toward the left, shall we say. Moscow is also the home of the University of Idaho. It seems wherever the political left sets up shop, constitution-violating mandates on the coronavirus are prevalent. Even if a state government is predominantly more conservative and less antagonistic, left-leaning city and county officials have decided that they're going to enforce their own restrictions anyway.
Well, so this gets back to what I was saying about everybody's using this outbreak to further whatever their political agenda is.
And second, the mask rules are being used against people who held meetings outdoors. And this is something that the author was seeing all over the world right now. And the question is asked, why is the science of virus behavior in outdoor open air environments not being discussed at all in the mainstream? Mike, your thoughts?
Well, again, the mainstream media is at the forefront of putting out the fear porn about coronavirus. And the idea is to get us all isolated in our homes and not talking to each other in that final run up to the election. Because the more people talk to each other, the more they're going to see through all the propaganda coming from the corporate media, not to mention the candidates themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what candidates in both parties are really afraid of is a true grassroots movement that says they're all bums. Vote them all out.
Yeah.
We could actually see a tremendous anti-incumbency wave this November.
I think you're entirely right. And I was talking with a former minister a couple of weeks ago, very nice guy who I really respect. And I was saying to him, right now, I am so disappointed in both candidates.
Yes.
I don't think I have a greyhound in this race. And that's a horrible thing for someone to say who does care about our country and that country's future. But Michael, I've got, what do we call it? I've got campaign, lie, and just corruption fatigue up to here right now. But let's go back to the coronavirus. Now, one of the things that they mention in this article is UV rays from sunlight kill microorganisms.
Yes, and UV from the sun will kill the coronavirus.
Yeah, and so the chance of contracting the coronavirus outdoor is next to zero. Yet mask rules are being strictly instituted from Melbourne, Australia to New York to Moscow, Idaho. And it seems as though no one is really taking a look at the hard science.
Well, unfortunately, science bears part of the blame of that because science has become commercialized.
Yeah.
And you have all these scientists in their white lab coats because studies have shown people tend to believe people wearing white lab coats.
I don't know.
And they're out there. Well, that's why I gave mine away.
Yeah.
You have all these competing interests like the pharmaceutical companies and political groups who can always find a scientist who wants a little bit of media attention to get up there and push whatever the agenda is.
Right.
So science bears a lot of the blame for what's going on by being inconsistent. I mean, look what happened with the CDC this last week where they came on out and said it's aerosolized and it's traveling through the air. Then they backed off and said, no, it isn't. Then they turned around and said, well, actually it was. And one can almost imagine the phone calls that were going on in the back channels with people screaming at them, you can't say that, it's bad for business.
The fur was flying.
The fur was definitely flying, and so was the coronavirus. All right, we got to take a break here for some commercials. We'll be back after these few words from our sponsors with the lovely Lady Claire. Welcome back to our show here, and lovely Lady Claire, take it away.
Yes. This came from, I believe, antiwar.com. And it was authored by a gentleman by the name of Danny Serson via antiwar.com. And it's titled, Driven by Delusions, the West Nagorno-Karabakh Hypocrisy. And Serson makes the observation that something really stands out in recent U.S. and most Western reporting of the ongoing horrific war in Nagorno-Karabakh. And, well, a couple of things. Ignorance and hypocrisy. Because many of the so-called news organizations have shuttered most of their foreign bureaus long ago, so there's a distinct lack of expertise in the mainstream press on this, and many other regional hotspots as well.
Well, why do they need regional news offices when they have all those intelligence officers sitting right there in the editorial room?
Yes, yeah. And we have now explainers on Nagorno-Karabakh. They kind of read like Wikipedia ripoffs hastily filtered through Washington's built-in blame Russia conflict colander. And they're spouting platitudes, they assume binaries that aren't, and Russian aggression that's not. And all the while missing out on the core cause of this, far worse than standard flare-up, along the unmonitored Azeri-Armenian line of contact. The elephant in the room is Turkey's Erdogan, okay?
Yeah.
And Mike, big time. High-intensity air and armored combat has entered its 10th day out here with little sign of abatement. Hundreds have been killed, including civilians, and major cities have been shelled, along with credible and corroborated reports that Turkey has indeed shipped in Ankara-paid Syrian mercenaries to support the Azeri army. In other words, while the current conflict is largely local in its roots and prolonged by political leaders who really shouldn't be in leadership on both sides.
And that's most of them.
Yeah, the real inciter this time around is Turkey. And that is, the violence is heightened and widened by a NATO member state that's led by an ethno-national chauvinist president, that was a mouthful,
yes,
stretched that alliance ostensible purpose and utility well past the breaking point.
Well, he goes to bed at night dreaming of the new Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and I have to wonder if Layla's observation might have some seeds of truth in there.
Yes.
You know, because I mean, Mike, when to you did NATO lose its credibility?
All the way back on like the first Iraq War.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would say so too.
So did the United Nations, for that matter.
Yeah. Now, the U.S., France, and Russia are meeting to discuss Nagorno-Karabakh. And the fighting has gone on since September 27th, and there's been no real abatement. And so far, we have reports, give or take, 100 killed, including civilians.
400 killed.
400 kills.
Reported killed, including civilians.
Yeah. Fighting has continued between Armenia and Azerbaijan in this disputed enclave, Nagorno-Karabakh, on Thursday. And apparently, these meetings have not done anything. Now, it looks like there's a little hope, and it's from Putin's Russia.
Yes.
Apparently, Azerbaijan's foreign minister was due to attend the talks in Geneva on Thursday. And so I'm hoping that there are going to be separate talks on Monday. I mean, that's what the schedule is right now, with officials from the US, Russia, and France. But unfortunately, no direct talks between Azerbaijan and Armenia have been scheduled. Michael, do you think this is going to be do you think Putin can make this fly and get these people talking to each other?
I really don't. Of course, I don't know what arrows he has in his quiver.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's certainly going to give it the old college try here. Yeah. And that would kind of be, it would be a good thing. And once again, Putin is showing himself to be a global statesman.
Yeah.
And I can see why so many people around the world admire him.
Yeah. Yeah. There have been massive historical places that have been destroyed, a cathedral in Shusha, and several journalists, unfortunately, have been injured. And it's also a PR war on both sides.
Yes, it is.
Nagorno-Karabakh.
Which is why you shouldn't shoot the journalists.
No, please. Journalists, protect. And the real problem also is that one or both sides are now using cluster bombs. And cluster bombs are horrific because little toddlers, children, these are painted yellow, and they look for all the world like small food packages, which also get dropped.
Well, kids will pick it up. It's brightly colored. They think it's a toy, or they think it's a food package, and it'll blow up and take off their hand or their entire arm.
Right.
And there have already been accusations of false flag attacks being made to justify the use of the cluster bombs, which are banned.
Yeah, and there has been a confirmation of the use of Israeli-made MO-95 cluster munitions, which scatter hundreds of bomblets or sub-munitions.
Okay.
We're going
to have to take another break here for commercials. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines at 1:15. Okay. So don't touch that dial just yet. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. And lovely Lady Claire, please pick up where you left off.
Yes. The hope for talks has been confirmed by Sputnik and RT Russia today.
Yes.
And I am just, my fingers are crossed, Mike, that Putin can stomp this out before it flames even further out of control. Because let me tell you what my worst nightmare is.
Yes.
That somehow Turkey gets hit on Turkish soil before NATO has an opportunity to throw it out, and Turkey will try to invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which indicates that if one NATO member gets hit, it is though all of the NATO members get hit.
Well, Erdogan is certainly capable, given some of the other things that have happened recently, he could fake an attack on his own soil specifically for that purpose.
Yeah. Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of what Stoltenberg and NATO need to do right the doggone heck now? I hope I can say that on radio, to talk to this man, sit him down, and say, look, you're not doing this.
Well, they can talk, but Erdogan is not listening. Again, this gets back to the idea, as Layla was saying, that Turkey may prove to be the undoing of NATO.
Yeah.
Because just like the United Nations lost credibility when they can't control Israel, if NATO can't control Turkey, they lose credibility.
Absolutely. One other issue I'd like to go to before we do open up the phones. Apparently, global food prices are rising as famine threat emerges. And food prices are continuing to rise during this coronavirus pandemic. And it's jeopardizing food security for tens of millions of people worldwide, especially people who are just right on the edge of being able to live or not live. Now, on Thursday, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, of the United Nations said world food prices rose for the fourth consecutive month in September. This is not good, Mike. Led by surging prices for cereals and vegetable oils, and that was reported in Reuters.
Well, look at all the farmland that got ruined by those floods earlier in the year.
And the heat damage.
Okay.
Weren't you saying, and this was a couple of weeks ago, if you take a look at what had been arable land in Iowa because of this, it wasn't the El Nino, it was another scorch kind of thing that happened.
Yes.
Yeah. And the available arable land right now in a place that's part of the U.S. breadbasket is just,
Well, a lot of these farmlands were inundated by floodwaters earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And the soil was simply too soft to support growing of grains and cereals and vegetables. That was the big problem there. Now, of course, we've got the West Coast is seriously on fire, and a lot of its arable land is at risk. I mean, it's already raced through the wine country.
I know.
So you can expect the price of California wines to go through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's start our own label, Old Smoky Wines.
There are wineries in this area, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gonna have to maybe visit.
Yes.
But FAO's cereal price index jumped 5.1 in September, and this is 13.6% above its value 1 year earlier. And apparently higher wheat price quotations led the increase, spurred by a brisk trading activity amid concerns over production prospects, particularly in the southern hemisphere, as well as dry conditions affecting winter wheat sowings around Europe. Vegetable oil price soared 6% in September over August prices due to rise in palm oil, sunflower seeds, and soy oil prices hitting eight-month high. Now, dairy was kind of the thing that didn't move.
Okay.
Only had a very moderate price increase for butter, cheese, and skim milk
I love
powder.
cheese.
Yes,
okay.
I know, we both do. And folks, I have a suggestion here. There are a lot of families, and particularly families with kids, who are very food insecure right now. If you are comfortable either donating money or, if you can, donating food to a local food bank, this is a really good time to do it. The other thing, and I know I sound like a chip CD, several families, family members, neighbors around you, get a decent freezer.
Yes,
because
that's another thing to do. Stock up.
These food prices are not going to go down, and especially not here anytime soon.
No, they aren't. And the other thing to be aware of is just be conscious about potential food waste, because most people are stunned when they find out how much food produced in this country does wind up in a landfill.
Yeah.
And so you might want to start thinking about, whatever you cook, you eat it all. And if you're not eating it all, then cook less.
Yeah.
And everything you throw in the trash, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Shall we open the phone lines, dear?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines now. And let's start with Steve in West Virginia. Okay. Steve, are you there? Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Okay, Steve, are you there? No. All right. Well, let's go to Laura in Indiana. Hello, Laura. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Okay, we seem to be having a problem with getting our phone calls on.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you do one more story?
All right.
And I'll nag the control room,
okay.
I
watched this with more than a little bit of concern. Apparently, U.S. Security Advisor O'Brien is warning China against attacking Taiwan.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, hang on.
Oh, we got our callers.
We got our callers back here. So let's go to Steve in West Virginia. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Mike. I had a couple of things for you, but I'm going to put them off till Monday because I want to address a couple of things that you and Claire mentioned.
Hello. Yes.
The first thing is this caller that called in, saying that Nancy Pelosi has put forth this commission on the 25th Amendment because they're going to actually use it to remove Biden. I mean, that's ridiculous, Mike. If you just give that any thought, that guy, whoever the caller is, he heard that someplace and he's just parroting it. That doesn't make sense at all. Biden would just resign. And I want to tell you, your listeners, something. Sometimes when you watch these people, don't listen so much to what they say. Watch their body language, because if you watch Nancy Pelosi, look at her body language. She is rattled big time. I mean, I can see it, Mike, big time.
Yep.
I've called into your show over the last year or so several times, and I've told you, when they went after Trump, look at his body language. He doesn't believe. He's very confident. His body, everything tells you that they're not going to be able to remove him. But when you watch Pelosi, listen to the tone of her voice. Don't listen to the words. Listen to the tone. She is rattled big time.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I want to put out. The other thing, I don't know if I haven't heard you talk about this, but then again, I haven't listened to every one of your shows.
Okay.
Because I'm working. But have you heard that Google is removing these QAnon apps? Have you heard about that?
I heard about that. Facebook is purging a lot of stuff right now. Why I don't use Facebook.
Okay. Right. But listen, there are people that actually paid for these apps. So Google has went in and removed the apps, and some people are reporting that they've actually removed the info off their phone. Now, I don't know if they do that with an update or how they do that. But it goes back to what you and Claire are talking about, the grassroots thing, because what's been reported is a lot of these people that are having virtual church services and stuff, they're talking about QAnon and stuff, and the child, abductions and the elites and all that. And the Google and everything knows what they're talking about, and they don't want that grassroots movement to happen.
No, they don't. They definitely don't. They want us all isolated and separated and totally dependent on whatever corporate media and the politicians tell us.
And scared.
Booga booga.
Yeah. They're worried about the QAnon. Even if QAnon has a lot of disinfo.
Yes.
One thing him and both Alex Jones have done is they've sowed distrust within our government, which is good. Now, Mike,
they had a lot of help from the government itself on that one.
Absolutely. One last thing, and then I'm off, and I'll let your other colors talk. Claire and Claire has mentioned that what Layla said about Putin using Turkey to break up NATO. My God, I hope Putin I hope Putin does it. I mean, I hope he's successful with that, because people don't realize how much money NATO sucks away from us.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. NATO is terrible. It should have been broken up a long time ago. It doesn't serve any purpose. I hope Putin accomplishes it. That's all I got for you, Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Laura in Indiana. Hello, Laura. Thanks for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind today? I'm sorry, Laura in Colorado.
Yes. Hi,
okay,
Mike.
There you are. Hi, you're on the air.
Oh, all right. Wanted to let you guys know I went into Costco yesterday in Colorado Springs and really did some major stocking up.
Good.
Because the word is out in this area. Of course, Colorado Springs is an area where there's a massive amount of military and retired military. So, basically the buzz is that everyone is expecting a civil war to break out, and they are very serious about it.
Yes.
So people are stocking up really well. I didn't get to listen to the earlier part of the broadcast, and I'm sorry, but I just wasn't in a place where I could listen. Last night I listened to a broadcast called True News.
Yes.
And they were talking about this 25th Amendment thing and being able to oust Trump, one of the things they talked about was getting Nancy Pelosi and that group being able to get the doctors at Walter Reed Hospital to state that Trump is not mentally sound because he left the hospital and all of this kind of thing. This committee that they want to put together, we don't know who these people are at Walter Reed Hospital, these doctors. We don't know if they're Democrats. We don't know who they are. But they were definitely talking about this coup being done against the president to remove him, and they got into it in really great detail. I would really invite anyone to go on their website and watch last night's broadcast to fully understand the way this 25th Amendment thing was dissected and the way that they thought or assumed that it could be done. So it was very, very interesting to watch that. I have one answer for everyone. If the American people want to put a stop to all this Bravo Sierra that keeps going on, there is one way to do it. And that is for everybody to suddenly not go to work. All the truck drivers stop. All the people say we're done. Until the Democrats are stopped, none of us are going to go to work. And I guarantee you within 72 hours, everything would start changing very, very quickly.
Well, Gandhi used that very technique in India to get the British to leave.
Well, and I don't understand. We've got a problem in this country, and it's called extreme cowardice. The American people have no problem calling into talk shows or getting on Facebook and complaining, but it seems like they just won't get off their ass and do a damn thing. And you know what? It needs to come to a stop. The American people need to get organized and say, okay, we're just not going to go to work. There's a tremendous amount of people that have paid time off that's built up that they could, take off and not hurt themselves financially. There are ways that a lot of us would be able to donate to help people and say, okay, well, you don't have to paid time off. Let's start a little organization here where people can donate to help folks that, would need some money to get by for taking off work for 3 or 4 days. But I really do believe most people could take off work for 3 or 4 days without causing disaster in their lives. So, I'm going to really start pushing this and say, hey, let's just start taking off work and say, we're done with it.
Yeah, it's a general strike.
And I think absolutely, we could call it a freedom strike. It's called a freedom strike. And from this point on, we're going to put the kibosh on the Democrats, pull off this freedom strike and say, you know what, Nancy Pelosi is a nutcase. She's got to go. The other Democrats, we're not going to go back to work until they're ousted. And let's see what would happen. I'm just so interested to see what would happen. Anyway, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you. Have yourself a good weekend. And we're going to switch over to Jerry in Chicago. Hello, Jerry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You live above Pitt? Oh, I'm on air.
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay. Hey, I wanted to mention something about, you guys were talking about food earlier and not wasting anything.
Yes.
I got to be honest with you. I mean, I saved the last 2 bites of my piece of bread to scrape the plate. And then I've warned people for years, hey, man, you better be careful. You're shoving all that food in the garbage. Why did you put it on your plate if you weren't going to eat it? Well, I'm full now.
Yes.
It's a bunch of bull crap. But YouTube. And I don't know. I've always been a good eater, and I don't waste food because it just irks me. And when I see other people waste food, and I've even eaten, I said, "You're going to throw that away?" Yeah. Well, here, give it to me. I'll eat it.
Yes.
Even though I'm full. I mean, but I just think you guys hit on a real good thing, and people are, I don't know, selfish or whatever you want to call it, but they don't respect the simple things. Let's put it that way. And thank you very much for taking my call, and I'm glad you're both doing good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Pat in Fort Worth. Hello, Pat. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, I agree about the wasted food thing. I mean, the homeless around here were being fed free in a restaurant, and they would go and order all this food and walk out and leave most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really can't stand that. One of the reasons I don't go to restaurants anymore is because they serve a huge portion, and unless they have a doggy bag to take the rest of it home, not that we have a dog, it feels wrong to just walk away and leave all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Pat, stay on the line. Got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of this Powhana Friday show after these few words. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program, this Powhana Friday, and we're finishing up with Pat in Fort Worth. Pat, if you could just sort of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, well, that restaurant doesn't serve the homeless anymore. But I just wanted to say that, I hate to see it deal with the UN at all. I've always been against it. And of course, Hillary, she wants the rights of the child. When they talk about that, what they mean is that she wanted the right of the child to sleep, have sexual relations with whoever the child wanted to. That's what she means by rights of the child. Don't ever forget that.
Okay.
And I think when the UN finally shows their true colors, what they're going to do is use NATO. See, NATO was established to fight Russia on the communism, but they asked them to join, so it's all going to be the same. Okay?
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Dustin, are you there? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Finally, you're on the air.
Mike, I'm not getting into that conversation. That's for another day.
All right.
Mike, Mike, you're in quarantine. Why is your HOTAS sitting on a shelf behind you? Your body's not ready, Mike, for Flight Simulator yet.
I haven't actually powered up my Flight Simulator in more than a year because I'm just so busy doing all this other stuff. I keep thinking one of these days I'll officially completely retire and I'll spend time with my flight controllers and my banjo and my telescope and my cameras and
your guitar.
And I don't have a guitar anymore.
But Mike,
okay.
Sorry, Cliff. Star Wars Squadrons came out, which is like, remember LucasArts, Mike, when they used to be a computer game company? You remember the games like The Dig, Sam and Max, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, X-Wing, remember that?
Yeah, I remember seeing them, but I've never been a big computer game fan other than flight simulators.
Well, Mike, get Flight Simulator and get the Star Wars Squadrons, because that's HOTAS compatible with your PC, because they do have, escort missions where you can be either side, right? So you can escort Imperial cargo ships and stuff. Come on, man, get your body ready. You're quarantined now. Look if your PC is ready. Mike, is your body ready and your PC ready?
Well, the PC should be ready, but it's a powerhouse machine because I do animation on it.
Well, every year your PC's got to be up. Well, what is it? About every 8 months now, right? Your PC's got to be upgraded.
Well, this one's way past its upgrade time. I think this machine's about 4 years old?
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. It's about 4 years old now. Yeah. But
all right, guys, have a good weekend, though.
All right, thanks an awful lot there for music. Time for us to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It doesn't get more serious than this right now. We need your help to get through this rough patch. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.